Hello, everyone. This is chapter 9 to Charlotte's Web, our read aloud. So let's get ready for our reading. Can you please bring out your notebook where you've been writing your inferences and a pen or a pencil so we can get started. Pause the video whenever you have to so you can make sure you're following along, okay? Let me share my screen so we can go over our vocabulary. And this chapter, just to let you know, is really juicy with a lot of new words, a lot of vocabulary. So I wanted to go over some of it with you, okay? This that you're looking at right here, it's a diagram of a spider leg, or a spider's leg. So I wanted to go over that with you because in the book, in this chapter, you're gonna hear how Charlotte and Wilbur talk about her spider leg. So there's a lot of words in there that she says, and it's not common words or familiar words to including myself. So I even went ahead and did this right here. So I added a little chart with the words and the pronunciation. Do you see these words on the bottom right here, these letters? This tells you how to pronounce each one of those words. So I added that as a helpful tool for myself so I can pronounce them as I'm reading them to you. So a spider's leg has 7 parts to it, okay? That's why you see 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 words here with the 7 parts to the leg, and you also see it here in the picture. So our first word, which is the beginning part, the closest part or attachment to the body, that one is, the word is called coxa. Coxa. If you want to repeat after me so you get familiar with the words, it's pronounced coxa. And the next part of the leg, it's called trochanter. Trochanter. Okay. The third part of the leg, moving towards the end, it's the femur. The femur. Okay. Next part is the patella. Patella. This part right here. The one that follows, it's called the tibia. Tibia. This part right here of the leg, it's called the metatarsus. Metatarsus. And the last part before you see the claw right here, that one is called the tarsus. Okay, so interesting words, right? But I wanted to make sure you knew that they were referring to the spider's leg when you hear all those words come out, okay? Let's go on to our next slide and take a look at the other words. So these here, the first word we have is called boasted. Boasted. That's when to speak in a prideful manner. So you're gonna hear Wilbur talk to Charlotte, and he's doing it in this way where he is prideful and he's like, I can do it, right? So that's called, or that's a certain way of speaking. So he's showing it in a boasted way, right? Hastily. So here, hastily is like, it's kind of like in a rush, right? So hastily is like in a rush. So that's the word there, hastily. Grunted. I don't know if you've heard of the word grunted, but normally you hear like someone when, like I put an example of a tennis player here, when you do the swing, you normally hear this sound right after. It's like, right? Like a grunt, right? When you're using force. So grunted. Oblige, to do a service out of kindness. To do a service out of kindness. So oblige is like you're doing something that someone is asking you to do, or even if you do it without someone asking you, you're obliging, you're helping out, you're doing it out of kindness. Summoning, when you might hear it, or you might hear someone say, well, I summons them to come in. Summoning is when you're calling someone, to call on someone urgently. So summoning is like, I need you to be here right now, right? So that's, you're summoning someone. And with authority, like you want them here right now, and you're being forceful, or the way you're saying it is that you want them here to be right here, right now. So that's the word summoning. Neglected. Neglected is when no one pays you any attention. So you see this little boy here is just sitting there quiet and pretty much feels like he's being ignored, right? Neglected, like no one's paying attention. In this chapter, they talk about this bridge. So Charlotte mentions the Queensboro Bridge, okay? So this is the Queensboro Bridge, and pay attention to the way it's designed, this top part right here, because she talks about it and compares it to a web, like a spider web, right? You know, Charlotte is a spider, so she knows how to make webs. She webs her web, she makes it into a spider web, and that's the thing that she does, right? So she talks about the Queensboro Bridge, how it's built, and it has the looks of a spider web on there. Okay, next slide, a couple of more words here. Sedentary. Sedentary means just sitting down, being calm, right? Just staying in one place, sedentary. Delectable, it's like, wow, like this food is so delicious, right? It's kind of pretty much referring to delicious, something that's very great to taste, or delectable, like this food is delectable, right? Vaguely. Vaguely means unclear, where you're not sure about what's going on, or maybe you get a vague look like I don't understand, right? Unsure. That's what vaguely means. Delay. I'm sure you know what delay means, but I thought I'd put it on there just in case. Delay is when being late or slow, like you're delaying everyone else, right? You're making everyone slow down, or stop delaying the class. That means stop interrupting the class, or making the class go a lot slower because you're interrupting. So those are vocabulary words that I thought we needed to know in order to get a better feel of what's happening in the chapter, okay? So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get ready and listen into chapter 9. Okay, so let me go ahead and start our read aloud. So think about what you would title the chapter, right? This is something that we've been working on. So listen in and then think about what would I title this chapter, right? So we're going to talk about our inference over the chapter, or over a character in the chapter, and then you want to title the chapter. So here we go. A spider's web is stronger than it looks. Although it is made of thin, delicate strands, the web is not easily broken. However, a web gets torn every day by the insects that kick around in it, and a spider must rebuild it when it gets full of holes. Charlotte liked to do her weaving during the late afternoon, and Fern liked to sit nearby and watch. One afternoon, she heard a most interesting conversation and witnessed a strange event. "You have awful hairy legs, Charlotte," said Wilbur, as the spider busily worked at her task. "My legs are hairy for a good reason," replied Charlotte. "Furthermore, each leg of mine has 7 sections. The coxka, the trochanter, the femur, the patella, the tibia, the metatarsus, and the torsus." Remember, I told you those are tricky words, right? Wilbur sat bolt upright. "You're kidding," he said. "No, I'm not kidding. Say those names again. I didn't catch them the first time." The coxa, the trochanter, the femur, patella, tibia, metatarsus, and the tarsus. Goodness, said Wilbur, looking down at his own chubby legs. I don't think my legs have 7 sections. Well, said Charlotte, you and I lead different lives. You don't have to spin a web. That takes real leg work. I could spin a web if I tried, said Wilbur, boasting. I've just never tried. Let's see you do it, said Charlotte. Fern chuckled softly, and her eyes grew wide with love for the pig. Okay, replied Wilbur. You coach me and I'll spin one. It must be a lot of fun to spin a web. How do I start? Take a deep breath, said Charlotte, smiling. Wilbur breathed deeply. Now climb to the highest place you can get to, like this. Charlotte raced up to the top of the doorway. Wilbur scrambled to the top of the manure pile. Very good, said Charlotte. Now make an attachment with your spinnerets. Hurl yourself into a space and let out a drag line as you go down. Wilbur hesitated a moment, then jumped out into the air. He glanced hastily behind to see if a piece of rope was following him to check his fall. But nothing seemed to be happening in his rear. And the next thing he knew, he landed with a thump. He grunted. Charlotte laughed so hard her web began to sway. What did I do wrong? Asked Pig when he recovered from his bump. Nothing, said Charlotte. It was a nice try. I think I'll try again, said Wilbur cheerfully. I believe what I need is a little piece of string to hold me. The pig walked out to his yard. You there, Templeton, he called. The rat poked his head out from under the trough. Got a little piece of string I could borrow? Asked Wilbur. I needed to spin a web. Yes, indeed, replied Templeton, who saved string. No trouble at all. Anything to oblige. He crept down into his hole, pushed the goose egg out of the way, and returned with an old piece of dirty white string. Wilbur examined it. That's just the thing, he said. Tie one end to my tail, will you, Templeton? Wilbur crunched low with his thin curly tail towards the rat. Templeton seized the string, passed it around the end of the pig's tail, and tied two half hitches. Charlotte watched in delight. Like Fern, she was truly fond of Wilbur, whose smelly pan and stale food attracted the flies that she needed, and she was proud to see that he was not a quitter and was willing to try again to spin a web. While the rat and the spider and the little girl watched, Wilbur climbed again to the top of the manure pile, full of energy and hope. Everybody watch, he cried, and summoning all his strength, he threw himself into the air head first. The string trailed behind him, but as he had neglected to fasten the other end to anything, it didn't really do any good, and Wilbur landed with a thud, crushed and hurt. Tears came to his eyes. Templeton grinned. Charlotte just sat quietly. After a bit, she spoke. You can spin a web, Wilbur, and I advise you to put the idea out of your mind. You lack 2 things needed for spinning a web. What are they? Asked Wilbur sadly. You lack a set of spinnerets and you lack knowing how. But cheer up, you don't need a web. Suckerman supplies you with the 3 big meals a day. Why should you worry about trapping food? I'll show you a picture. So you see there, Templeton tying the string, and then you see him here trying to spin the web as he's jumping into the air. And do you see Templeton? He has a grin in his face. I'm going to ask you about that in a bit. Wilbur sighed. You're ever so much clever and brighter than I am, Charlotte. I guess I was just trying to show off. Serves me right. Templeton untied his string and took it back to his home. Charlotte returned to her weaving. You needn't feel too bad, Wilbur, she said. Not many creatures can spin webs. Even men aren't as good as as spiders, although they think they're pretty good. And they'll try anything. Did you ever hear of the Queensboro Bridge? Wilbur shook his head. Is it a web? Sort of, replied Charlotte. But do you know how long it took men to build it? 8 whole years. My goodness, I would have starved to death waiting that long. I can make a web in a single evening. What do people catch in the Queensboro Bridge? Bugs? Asked Wilbur. No, said Charlotte, they don't catch anything. They just keep trotting back and forth across the bridge, thinking there is something better on the other side. If they'd hang head down at the top of the thing and wait quietly, maybe something good would come along. But no, with men, it's rush, rush, rush every minute. I'm glad I'm a sedentary spider. What does sedentary mean? Asked Wilbur. Means I sit still a good part of the time and I don't go wandering all over creation. I know a good thing when I see it. And my web is a good thing. I stay put and wait for what comes. It gives me a chance to think. Well, I'm sort of sedentary myself, I guess, said the pig. I have to hang around here whether I want to or not. You know where I'd really like to be this evening? Where? In a forest, looking for beech nuts and truffles and delectable roots, pushing leaves aside with my wonderful strong nose, searching and sniffing along the ground, smelling, smelling, smelling. You smell just the way you are, remarked a lamb who had just walked in. I can smell you from here. You're the smelliest creature in the place. Wilbur hung his head. His eyes grew wet with tears. Charlotte noticed his embarrassment and she spoke sharply to the lamb. Let Wilbur alone, she said. He has a perfect right to smell, considering his surroundings. You're no bundle of sweet peas yourself. Furthermore, you are interrupting a very pleasant conversation. What were you talking about? What were we talking about, Wilbur, when we were so rudely interrupted? Oh, I don't remember, said Wilbur. It doesn't make any difference. Let's not talk anymore for a while, Charlotte. I'm getting sleepy. You go ahead and finish fixing your web, and I'll just lie here and watch you. It's a lovely evening. Wilbur stretched out on his side. Twilight settled over Suckerman's barn and a feeling of peace. Fern knew it was almost supper time, but she couldn't bear to leave. Swallows passed on silent wings and out of the doorway, bringing food to their young ones. From across the road, a bird sang. Lurvy sat down under an apple tree and lit his pipe. The animal sniffed the familiar smell of strong tobacco. Wilbur heard the trill of the tree toad, and the occasional slamming of the kitchen door. All these sounds made him feel comfortable and happy, for the love life and love to be a part of the world of a summer evening. But as he lay there, he remembered what the old sheep had told him. The thought of death came to him and he began to tremble with fear. Charlotte, he said softly. Yes, Wilbur? I don't want to die. Of course you don't, said Charlotte in a comforting voice. I just love it here in the barn, said Wilbur. I love everything about this place. Of course you do, said Charlotte. We all do. The goose appeared followed by her 7 goslings. They thrust their little neck out and kept up a musical whistling, like a tiny troop of pipers. Wilbur listened to the sound with love in his heart. Charlotte, he said. Yes, said the spider. Were you serious when you promised you would keep them from killing me? I was never more serious in my life. I am not going to let you die, Wilbur. How are you going to save me? Asked Wilbur, whose curiosity was very strong on this point. Well, said Charlotte, vaguely, I don't really know, but I'm working on a plan. That's wonderful, said Wilbur. How is that plan coming along, Charlotte? Have you got very far with it? Is it coming along pretty well? Wilbur was trembling again, but Charlotte was cool and collected. Oh, it's coming all right, she said lightly. The plan is still in its early stages and hasn't completely shaped up yet, but I'm working on it. When do you work on it? Begged Wilbur. When I'm hanging head down at the top of my web, that's when I do my thinking, because then all the blood is in my head. I'd be only too glad to help in any way I can. Oh, I'll work it out alone, said Charlotte. I can think better if I think alone. All right, said Wilbur, but don't fail to let me know if there's anything I can do to help, no matter how slight. Well, replied Charlotte, you must try to build yourself up. I want you to get plenty of sleep and stop worrying. Never hurry and never worry. Chew your food thoroughly and eat every bit of it, except you must leave just enough for Templeton. Gain weight and stay well. That's the way you can help. Keep fit and don't lose your nerve. Do you think you understand? Yes, I understand, said Wilbur. Go along to bed then, said Charlotte. Sleep is important. Wilbur trotted over to the darkest corner of his pen and threw himself down. He closed his eyes. In another minute, he spoke. Charlotte, he said. Yes, Wilbur. May I go out to my trough and see if I left any of my supper? I think I left just a tiny bit of mashed potatoes. Very well, said Charlotte. But I want you in bed again without delay. Wilbur started to race out to his yard. Slowly, slowly, said Charlotte. Never hurry and never worry. Wilbur checked himself and crept slowly to his trough. He found a bit of potato, chewed it carefully, swallowed it, and walked back to bed. He closed his eyes and was silent for a while. Charlotte, he said in a whisper. Yes? May I get a drink of milk? I think there are a few drops of milk left in my trough. No, the trough is dry, and I want you to go to sleep. No more talking. Close your eyes and go to sleep. Wilbur shut his eyes. Fern got up from her stool and started for home, her mind full of everything she had seen and heard. Good night, Charlotte, said Wilbur. Good night, Wilbur. There was a pause. Good night, Charlotte. Good night, Wilbur. Good night. Good night. That's the end of our chapter, my friends. So I want you to think. Remember, I asked you to think about Templeton. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and let's get our books and notebooks ready, because I want us to take a look at our inference that we're going to make today, okay? Using the same sheet you've been working on. So I was thinking of Templeton, since Templeton did something he did something really nice for Wilbur, right? He went into his his nest or his spot where he has all his tools and all his things that he collects, and he brought out a piece of string for Wilbur so he can try to make this web. But something else happened, right? I want you to think about that. So what can we infer about Templeton after you saw Wilbur attempt to make the web but failed, right? He wasn't able to. But then Templeton did something, right? He had like a smirk on his face. He was like, right? He had a smile like, yes, you weren't able to do it, right? So I want us to think about that. What can we infer about Templeton's reaction? Why do you think he's smiling? I want you to think. I'm going to pause for a second. Why was Templeton smiling after Wilbur failed to build or make his web? So if you have it, go ahead and give me a thumbs up. I know I can't see you, but work with me here. Thumbs up. I'm giving you a couple more seconds. Really, really think, why did Templeton have that smirk or that smile on his face? Okay, I'll start. So inference about character traits. So what can we infer about Templeton's reaction? I'm going to say, I infer that he found pleasure, he enjoyed, right? He found pleasure in Wilbur's failure because in page 58, it says, Templeton grinned. Oops. Grinned, right? Templeton grinned. Ay, sorry. Templeton grinned. And why did he do this, right? What was his motivation? I have something down. So his motivation, why do you think he feels this way? Why do you think he's smiling and grinning after seeing that Wilbur was unable to build or make this web? I feel like his motivation is this. This makes me think that Templeton's motivation is to see things not pan out in another way, like not work out. Or work out for the farm animals. I'm going to say maybe because of the way they feel towards him, right? Do you remember earlier in the book how it discussed how they feel about Templeton, right? How the goose doesn't trust him with his baby gooselings, right? Like the little baby geese. So it makes me think that Templeton is like, well, they don't really care about me, or they don't really like me. So yes, he did something nice for Wilbur, right? He found the rope for him, but because he wasn't able to build his web, he just saw it as like, there, see? So he was, in a sense, being mean, right? Instead of saying, oh, it's okay, Wilbur, or just doing what Charlotte told him, right? Charlotte told him, it's okay, you don't need to learn how to build the web because you get food all the time through the Zuckermans, right? So that's what it makes me think about. So now your turn is, what you need to do is come up with a title for this chapter. Okay, what do you think you would title this chapter and why? Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, write down what you would title the chapter, and after you're done with that and give me a reason why, then you're going to press play so you can talk about or listen to my chapter summary. Okay, this is my chapter summary of chapter 9. I want you to write your own, but listen in for this one. Maybe this will give you some ideas or some pointers. Of course, you don't want to copy my chapter summary, but you want to make sure that you write your own. Okay, so I'll read it out. I'll read it out for you. So it says, Wilbur makes an attempt to create his own web after announcing he could do it as well as Charlotte. He soon realizes it wasn't as easy as Charlotte made it seem. Charlotte explains and reminds him that he doesn't need to know how to spin a web because Mr. Zuckerman brings him his food 3 times a day. There is no need for a web to be, there's no need for him to build the web to catch food. After realizing she is right, Wilbur then begins to worry about him becoming the Zuckerman's dinner. Remember, he's concerned about him getting killed, right? Charlotte calms him down by telling him that she has a plan in place to save him. Wilbur retreats to his pen's corner to sleep for the night. Okay, that was my summary of the chapter. You can go ahead and write your summary, and notice I drew a little picture here with the string attached to Wilbur's tail as he's trying to build his web. You can go ahead and draw any picture you want that has to do with this chapter. It doesn't have to be this. It can be anything. You can draw Templeton smiling and having that smirk on his face, right? Anything that goes along with the chapter would be perfectly fine. Again, have fun with your summaries, make them fun and interesting, and make them colorful, right? You can draw and make it nice and colorful. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed chapter 9 and look out for chapter 10 for tomorrow so you can follow along with our read alouds. Have a good day.